Well, I'm sitting here in my backyard. You probably will hear my boys kicking the kickballs and yelling, but we'll see how it goes. Have you ever lost something? Well, I remember when I was younger, I used to collect what they're called micro machines, which pretty much are like miniature Matchbox cars. I had a big collection of them, and it seemed like every time I find some of them, I'd always lose some. Well, probably one of those times, I remember searching for the micro machines, and lo and behold, under my bed where I was looking, I found some other toys that I had lost a while ago. In life, we all have expectations, don't we? We kind of have a way that we think it's going to play out. But what if in the middle of it, in the middle of the disappointment and the adversity, what if we had a posture to see God in the middle of the high and the low moments? For this week, the question we want to think about is the big idea is loss. What if we could see gain in the middle of loss? We could see the things that we've lost, and we can be okay with that. But also we can look at the things that we've gained, not maybe because of the loss, but in the midst of the loss too. We want to kind of rest in both those high and those low things throughout this week. This week we're going to be looking at Psalm 18, which was written by David. And you may know a lot about David, maybe you know a little bit, maybe you recognize the name. But what I want to do is give you a few kind of highlights of his life, so that as you read the psalm, you have a better understanding of who it is that wrote this and what he actually went through. Because as you read through Psalm 18 this week, you'll notice, and what we want you to do is actually to pay attention to the things that he lost, but also the things that he gained. And by having a greater understanding of what he actually went through over many, many years, it kind of actually helps you understand all that he was writing about, and not realize that that your image of him was just kind of like this one-sided, or maybe based on two stories, but that you're going to have a greater understanding for all that he went through. So if you want to follow along, you can see the life of David. We're going to be kind of looking through 1 Samuel, a lot of it, starting chapter 16. So what kind of starts out, just picture this, David is around 10 or 12 years old. It's when he goes to Bethlehem and gets anointed. So imagine being 12 years old, probably in 6th grade, and someone comes up and dumps a bunch of oil on your head. And what that symbolizes is that you are a king. So at 10 or 12 years old, to be anointed as a king, kind of weird, especially when you have a lot of older brothers and siblings. They typically would actually be kings before he would. So then when he's about 12 or 14 years old, he actually goes to serve in Saul's court. He played the harp, so he was a court musician, if you will, and Saul loved his music. And so then a couple years later is when the Philistines are at war with Saul and the Israelites. And that's probably the story you know about David and Goliath. David shows up on the war front to bring food to his brothers, sees Goliath, throws a stone with a sling, hits him in the head, either kills him or knocks him out, and then basically cuts off his head with a huge sword. So everyone's he's a hero then. So then you have we're now kind of in 1 Samuel 18. David is now probably 25 to 27 years old. So this is probably about 10 years after he killed Goliath. He is, still kind of working for Saul, but then Saul gets upset and fires him. Basically because people loved David more than Saul. Because David was actually leading war campaigns, and people were saying that he was killing tens of thousands and Saul was only killing thousands. Huge insult, biblical times. So he kicks him out, but David is still kind of leading an army. Well, then we have in 1 Samuel 21, about 2 years later, Saul actually threatens to kill David. So David actually has to leave. He actually has to act like a crazy man in a town of Gath. That's in 1 Samuel 21. Then, probably about 4 or 5 years later, when David is about 30 or 32, David is hiding in a cave because he couldn't go into any towns because Saul was searching for him. So then what happens is David actually creeps to the mouth of the cave, and Saul is there, and actually I think Saul is going to the bathroom. David cuts a piece of his robe, and then as Saul goes away, David basically kind of almost like apologizes because It was basically like an insult to the king. But David kind of said, I spared your life and I could have killed you. Saul was upset, felt bad, but that doesn't really help anything. Well then, so David basically starts to, he's kind of a soldier, and a lot of these vagabond, ragtag bunch of soldiers come join him, but they're amazing fighters. So David, what he does is he actually helps kind of fight against the enemies of Israel, kind of unofficially. So then, around when David's about 35 to 37 years old, in 1 Samuel 30, he actually kills a group of Amalekites. I don't know if that's how you say it. Okay, now finally, in 2 Samuel 2 verse 7, David is about 42 to 44 years old. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That's been about 30 years from when David was first anointed to when he's actually finally the king. And this is only king of Judah. It's actually not until a couple years later when he actually about 7 years later, when he actually becomes king over Israel, because they're kind of a divided nation. But I want you to just keep that in mind. You can, if you want to read through some of 1 and 2 Samuel, that'd be awesome. But just keep that in mind as you read Psalm 18. Just all that David had gone through. David, I don't know if you knew this, but David was best friends with Saul's son Jonathan. You know, pretty awesome name, right? But so as you can see, David was faithful, but a lot of these things happened to him that were difficult. So as you look through the Psalms, as you look through Psalm 18, I want you just to notice, and what I actually want you, what you're going to do is to look at the lows and the highs that David went through, and to realize that David was in the middle of both of those, and where we want you to understand that it's okay to be in this moment of life.